What if I told you that you could lose fat easily after 40 without counting calories? If you're tired of tracking every bite, in this video, I'm gonna walk you through a 6-step framework you can use to lose fat without tracking your calories. I'm Rio and I help busy men over 40 transform their bodies by training just twice a week. I've done it myself and I've helped dozens of men just like you do the same. So I just got off a call with my client, Raphael, who's 49 years old, and we've been working together for about 2 weeks now. And his long-term goal is to lose about 100 pounds. And so far in his first 2 weeks, he's already lost about 10 pounds. But recently he hit a bit of a plateau and his weight stalled. And whenever I have clients whose weight plateaus, the first thing I look at is the tracking. I look at the diet itself and what they're eating, of course, right? And upon looking at that, I noticed that his diet was sort of all over the place, right? And he was able to lose this first 10 pounds without tracking too closely, without following too strict of a structure. But I told him that in order to achieve his long-term goals of losing 100 pounds, he would need to dial in his tracking. The problem that he presented me with upon me telling him that is that every time that he's tried tracking his calories and being very meticulous with that and weighing his food in the past, he's always quit. Not because it didn't work, but because it's just too much of a pain in the ass. It's just unsustainable for him, right? And this is a real truth that I hear from so many men over 40. Most men absolutely hate calorie tracking. And this is something that I resonate with as well. When I first got into this whole weight loss thing and getting into fitness, I too hated tracking my calories. I thought it was a complete pain in the ass. Over time, I got used to it. It's sort of become second nature, but I can really resonate with this, right? And this is a real problem. And upon him telling me this, I shared with him the framework that I'm about to share with you in this video that will hopefully help you still lose fat and get to where you want to go with your physique, but without being too meticulous with calorie tracking. Okay, so to lose fat without tracking calories too closely, you must understand the sliding scale. So this is the first thing that I explained to Raphael, and the sliding scale basically refers to the trade-off between variety/structure and tracking strictness. So I'll draw this out here for you so that you better understand it. So let's picture two sliding scales. The more variety that you have in your diet in terms of the number of different meals and foods that you include, and the less structure you have, the more strict you have to be with your calorie tracking. Now, the less variety that you have and the more structure you have, the less strict you have to be with your calorie tracking. So this is honestly one of the most powerful concepts that I've ever discovered when it comes to this whole, fat loss and calorie tracking thing. Essentially, more variety in your diet plan increases variables, which makes tracking more of a pain in the ass, because the more variables you have, the more things you have to track. And if you're eating different things all the time, that's like you're constantly have to pull up MyFitnessPal or whatever software you use to track your calories and constantly find new foods, new ingredients, new meals. And not only is it more of a pain in the ass because of that, it's also more inaccurate because increased variables just makes it more likely that your tracking is going to be inaccurate, that you're going to miss some things, that it's going to be off a little bit, right? Like picture having less variety in your diet, right? If you have fewer meals, fewer foods to sort of account for, that removes variables, which makes tracking a lot easier. It makes it less of a pain in the ass because you're not having to constantly pull out your tracking software and find different things. There are just fewer things to track. And not only is that less of a pain, that also makes tracking a lot more accurate because fewer variables just means more accurate calorie tracking. So the big idea here with this whole sliding scale, and the key thing you have to take away that's gonna allow you to essentially still lose fat and get to where you wanna be without being too meticulous with calorie tracking is basically to understand that the more variety you have in your diet plan, the closer you have to track your calories, the closer you have to, the more meticulous and strict you have to be. But if you have less variety and more of a structure that you're following on a consistent basis, you can be a lot less strict. And that's ultimately the trade-off that you have to accept, is that if you don't want to track your calories too closely, you have to accept that your diet's going to have less variety and it's going to be more structured. If you're enjoying this video and you're over 40, tap the link in my description to grab your free fit call. This is where we'll see if you're a good fit to work with me or not. And if you are, I'll show you how we can take this exact system, personalize it to your goals, and give you the accountability to follow through. Just click the link in my description now, pick a time, and lock in your spot. So now that you understand the big idea here, let's actually go over the 6-step framework that will allow you to still lose fat without having to track calories. So essentially, to stop counting every calorie, you need to have a framework. And that framework must be systematic, it must minimize variables, and it must be simple and straightforward to follow. So the first step in this framework is to nail down your meal structure and timing. So meal timing and structure is a very individual thing. You need to decide on when you personally like to eat your meals, what works best for you and your lifestyle. Now, the question that I always like to ask myself and to ask clients when it comes to deciding on the meal structure and the timing of those meals is, what structure increases the likelihood that I go to bed feeling full and satisfied each night while still being in a calorie deficit? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Some people like doing 3 square meals per day, like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Some people like to eat 1 meal a day. Some people like to eat 2 meals a day. It's completely up to you. You have to find this out for yourself. But what I will do is I will share with you my recommendation. I'll share with you the structure that I've landed on as like the best. And keep in mind, like, I'm someone who has a really big appetite and I've always struggled with staying lean. I grew up overweight. And so this is the structure that I've sort of landed on that makes it super easy to eat in a calorie deficit and go to bed feeling full and satisfied each night. So the way that I like to do it is that I'll wake up at 8 a.m. And what I'll do is I'll simply fast for the first 4 to 6 hours. And I'll drink water and coffee. The reason why I like to fast first thing in the morning is because, first of all, I'm never hungry first thing in the morning. I also don't like eating in the morning because that's when I like to get my most important work done, and I find if I eat in the morning, it sort of slows me down. I become sluggish, I become lethargic. So I like to stay light, and on an empty stomach, it increases my focus. And I also have a really big appetite. And so pushing my first meal hours into the day makes it so that my eating window is smaller. And what that does is it creates the illusion of abundance. So if I have to eat, let's say 2,500 calories per day in order to lean down, if I spread those 2,500 calories evenly throughout, let's say 4 or 5 meals throughout the day, it's not gonna feel like very much food. But if I push those 2,500 calories to where I'm only consuming them in the latter half of the day, it's gonna feel like a lot of food. It's gonna create that illusion of abundance. And so I go to bed feeling full and satisfied each night, which is what I'd recommend. If you have a big appetite, save most of your calories for later in the day, right? Now, I'll have my first meal at 1 p.m. And this is always a light meal, usually around 500 calories. And then I'll have my dinner at around 5 or 6 p.m. And this is always a really big meal, usually around 1,400 calories. And then after dinner, I will have a dessert, usually around 7 or 8 p.m. And this is usually another 500 calories. So this is the structure that I recommend. This is a really powerful meal structure when it comes to fat loss, because the whole idea is that we're just pushing our food later into the day so that we go to bed feeling full and satisfied. So you fast for the first 4 to 6 hours, then you have a light meal, just 500 calories. And what that does is it saves a lot of calories for that big dinner meal. So you can just eat a big ass feast. And then, you have your 1,400 calorie meal, and then this is obviously going to depend on how many calories you're trying to get each day, but the whole point is that the first and last meal are just small meals, and then you basically save most of your calories for that big dinner meal. It allows you to go to bed feeling full. Now, you obviously don't need to follow this structure, but the idea is that you have a structure. You know when, how many meals you're going to eat, you know when you're going to eat them, and you stick to that structure every day. It's super important. If you're not going to track your calories too closely, you need to have a structure that you stick to day in and day out, because it's going to act as a guardrail for you. Now, the second step of the framework is to figure out your go-to meals. So once you've nailed down your meal structure and you know how many meals you're going to eat per day, and you know at what time you're going to eat those meals, you want to figure out your go-to meals. And so your go-to meals are just the meals that you love and that you gravitate toward. And so you want to look at the meal structure that you selected, and you want to figure out, like, how many meal slots do I have? In my case, for the structure that I showed you, there were 3 different meal slots. As soon as you know that, all you want to do is to find a couple meals for each of those meal slots to rotate through and to repeat. They should be meals that you absolutely love and that keep you full, right? And so my tip when it comes to, like what to base these meals around is focus on whole foods. Just focusing on whole foods that are like single ingredient foods, things like eggs, lean meats, fruits, vegetables, legumes. Focusing on foods like that will make you less likely to overeat, just because they're more filling. Like, it's a lot more difficult to overeat your calories when you're eating just healthy food, because it's just less palatable than, you know, chips or Pop-Tarts or ice cream or chocolate, right? So just focusing on whole foods alone will make this whole process a lot easier for you. And I would also encourage you to include foods where the calories are automatic. So if you remember the meal structure that I just showed you, that first meal was 500 calories, last meal was 500 calories. What I like to do for those meals is I like to include foods where the calories are automatic. So for example, if I'm having a dessert and I'm having, like, let's say a couple ice cream bars, all I gotta do is look at the package, and it literally says 250 calories per bar. Boom, I don't need to weigh anything, I don't need to track it. It literally tells me the calories 250 per bar. So it's automatic and it's accurate. For my first meal, I'll have a few eggs. I know, you know, eggs have 70 calories per egg. I know an apple has 100 calories. Like, if you include foods that, like, the calories are automatic and it's not like requiring you to put a bunch of ingredients together and like weigh it on the food scale, it's gonna be a lot easier for you. So those are my tips when it comes to like figuring out your go-to meals. But at the end of the day, just look at the meal structure that works well for you, look at how many slots you have to work with, and then pick a couple go-to meals that you really love for each of those slots and just repeat them daily. So the third step in this framework is to become a uniform eater. This is honestly probably the most important step of this entire framework. This is really the step that's going to unlock this whole thing for you and make it so that you're gonna have no problems leaning down while not really, you know, meticulously tracking your calories. So uniform eating just means eating the same meals every day. You want to repeat the go-to meals that you chose every single day. This is actually, I would say this is a non-negotiable if you want to lose fat without tracking calories. If you eat differently every single day, like all your meals are different, all the ingredients, all the foods are different, you're fucked. I'm sorry. Like, it's not gonna work. Like, you're screwed. It's not gonna work at all. It's just gonna be way too difficult. Like, your tracking is bound to be inaccurate because you're not familiar with any of those meals. It's just impossible. But if you eat the same meals all the time, you know those meals, right? Like, that's the power of uniform eating. It basically eliminates the need for tracking because you already know the meals, because you've tracked them before. You had it yesterday. You had it the day before yesterday, right? It eliminates decision fatigue and it makes your diet automatic because you're so familiar with those meals. You know your diet is dialed in without even needing to think about it because you've had those same meals so many times that you can literally just eyeball it, right? Like, you know, I know, for example, if I go and make some like rice and ground beef, I've made that meal like a million times. I know roughly what the portion looks like. I know how many calories is in that because I've had it so many times. But if I go and make some like ridiculously complicated meal, I'm screwed. Like, I have no idea what's in it. You know what I mean? Because I've never had it before. So this is a non-negotiable. Like, if you want to nail down this whole like losing weight without tracking, you got to become a uniform eater, man. Remember the trade-off. Like, if you're gonna do this, you have to accept less variety. You know what I mean? Like, if you're someone who loves cooking different meals and like you're okay with having lots of variety, and like that's what you want, and you're okay with needing to like track every single thing, completely fine. But this is obviously not for you. This is for people who just want to sort of have their diets fall into the background of their life, not have to think about it too much. But this is what you have to accept. You got to become a uniform eater if you want to lose weight without tracking calories. Now, step 4 of the framework is to actually track closely for the first few weeks. So I would strongly recommend that if you're going to embark on this journey here, track your calories really closely for the first few weeks, and then you can ease off. So momentum is the most important thing in fat loss by far. Very few people know that, but like, momentum is really the secret to unlocking very easy and rapid fat loss. So one of the keys to unlocking momentum is to be very, very strict for the first few weeks. I would strongly recommend track like a psychopath. Like, just track meticulously your calories for the first few weeks, and then that will get you locked in. That will get you to the point where like eating on this diet is super easy. You don't even think about it. Like, your body's not resisting the calorie deficit. You're not feeling hungry at all. Like, that's what it means to be locked in. Like, being locked in just means like you've reached a point of bliss where like adhering to your diet plan every day just becomes really easy because you built that momentum and you don't want to screw it up, right? So this initial period where you're tracking very closely is super important for getting acquainted with your meals. So you remember how I said you want to pick go-to meals and you want to repeat them every single day. Well, you still need to know like what's in those go-to meals. You need to understand like how many calories in this meal, how much protein am I getting, right? And the only way to do that is to actually spend some time tracking. Like, the only reason why I know the calories in my meals is because I've tracked them so many times. Like I've tracked my meals so many times that I can literally do it with my eyes closed. And that's sort of like, you need to go through that initial period, because after that, you will be able to just eyeball your food. But you can't eyeball your calories. You can't look at a meal and say, oh, that's about 1,000 calories if you've never tracked it before. You know what I mean? So like there's sort of a prerequisite period of time where you have to bite the bullet. You just have to accept that you're gonna have to track a little bit, you know, for at least a short period of time. And then you can sort of take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit. You can relax a little bit, because you'll have developed the ability to actually just eyeball the calories. So the fifth step of this framework is to weigh yourself every day. So when you're embarking on this journey of losing weight without tracking calories, it becomes absolutely crucial to weigh yourself every single day, because your weight, instead of the actual like tracking of the calories, will be the indicator of whether you're on track or not. So like if you're losing weight at a good rate and like things are going smoothly, just keep going. You know you're doing things right. However, if you're stalled or you're gaining weight, you know you need to tighten things up. You know, like you're eating a bit too much, right? So like your weight sort of becomes like your compass. It's gonna tell you if you're doing things right or not. You know, if you're gaining weight or your weight's not moving, you're probably gonna have to reduce your calories a little bit. You're gonna have to take some food away, right? So like really pay attention to your weight. Like some people, it's not great to weigh themselves daily because they become too like emotionally attached to it, and it starts to like wreak havoc. Like I have this with my clients all the time, where they're like trying to lose weight, and like some days they'll like gain a few pounds and they'll freak out. And it's like, dude, like you have to look at the average. So I'd strongly recommend, like if you're doing this, don't pay too much attention to the daily ups and downs, because your weight's gonna fluctuate. That's completely normal. What you have to do is you have to basically weigh yourself from Monday to Sunday, you know, 7 days a week. You have to add up the weight from each day and then divide it by 7 to find the average. You're just looking at the average each week. That's what I do with my clients. Do not freak out about the daily like fluctuations, because you'll just drive yourself nuts. But like when you're doing this, you should see a gradual decrease in your average weight week to week. And if you're not, you know you need to change something. So the sixth step of this framework is to walk every day. So you might be wondering, like, what does walking have to do with tracking calories? Well, one thing you're just gonna have to accept is that if you're not tracking your calories closely, you're probably gonna be a bit less accurate than if you were actually like weighing and tracking things closely. That's kind of just like a reality that you have to be okay with when you're following this sort of approach. However, what can really help with a little bit of inaccuracy in your calorie tracking is walking. If you go over your calories a little bit because your tracking is inaccurate, walking acts as an insurance policy. That's how I see walking when it comes to fat loss. Walking is like an insurance policy. Like if you go over your calories a little bit, the walking will save your ass, right? It can sort of clean up that discrepancy and make sure that you still drop fat. So walking is like, it's like the glue that sort of holds this whole approach together, because you might be a bit inaccurate with this sort of stuff. Like it's just kind of a reality. Like the whole idea behind this approach is to sort of be a little bit more hands off with your diet, right? So it's just a reality that you have to be okay with. But one thing that can really make sure that you still see like rapid progress when you're doing this is to just walk a lot. You know what I mean? Like if you're aiming for rapid fat loss, I would aim for like 10 to 15,000 steps per day if it's doable. Honestly, what I end up telling most of my clients, since you know they're busy guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, is like just walk as much as you can every day. Like this is oftentimes not that realistic for the men that I work with, but like try to get as many steps as you can every single day. It is just like a force multiplier when it comes to fat loss, and it's really going to help you if you're following this structure to sort of clean up that inaccuracy that might occur. If you enjoyed this video and you're over 40, tap the link in my description right now to grab your free fit call. On this call, we'll see if we're a good fit to work together or not. And if we are, I'll show you how we can take the exact system I outlined in this video and personalize it to your goals and give you the accountability to actually follow through and get results. So click the link in my description now, pick a time, and lock in your spot.